The door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing in the empty hallway like the final note of a sad song. Jenna took a moment to catch her breath, her heart racing, the world outside a blur. She leaned against the wall, the cool surface grounding her as she stared down at her trembling hands. There it was, the weight of everything she had tried to hide, crashing down around her like 1,000 shards of glass. She could still hear his voice in her head. You always run away when things get hard. That accusation had stung, yet deep down she knew he was right. She had told herself it was for his own good, that leaving was the only way to protect him from her spiraling chaos. But here, outside his apartment, she discovered that the truth felt like suffocating darkness instead of freedom. Jenna closed her eyes and inhaled sharply, her mind racing to that moment just days before. The warmth of the sun filtering through the living room window, and Ryan's laughter echoing as they played a silly game. All those moments seemed so perfect then, like an oasis in a desert of uncertainty. But now she could only hear the anger laced in his voice moments before she walked out. "Do you think I can just pretend nothing happened?" He had stood there, arms crossed, disbelief etched on his face. The hurt in his eyes had cut deeper than she expected. "Ryan, please listen." "No, you're the one who needs to listen," he shouted. Their voices had echoed in the small space, bouncing off the walls of their shared life. "You keep shutting me out. I can't keep chasing you if you're going to keep running away." His words hit her hard, but she had been too scared to admit the truth. That truth felt like a dangerous weapon she'd kept hidden, a reality she didn't want to face. Deep down, she feared that revealing it would shatter everything they had built together. Jenna opened her eyes and stared into the distance, but the images of the past felt closer now. She remembered the night she found out she was pregnant, the chilling news mixing with the overwhelming fear of what it all meant. She had sat on the cold bathroom floor, the test crumpled in her palm, and her mind whirred with thoughts of how to tell Ryan. What would his reaction be? His dreams of travel, of building a life unbounded by the confines of responsibility. Could she take that away from him? That wasn't fair. But repeating those thoughts had become her justification. Jenna sighed, her chest constricting, painfully. She could have told him, but the thought of seeing his face drop, the disappointment flickering in his eyes, had paralyzed her. A gust of wind blew through the hallway, making Jenna shiver. She hugged her arms close, lost in the quicksand of her own mind. The silence around her was almost deafening. The space filled with all the things unsaid, all the emotions tangled like a mess of yarn. She yearned to reach out and pull Ryan in, to explain everything, but the courage had slipped through her fingers like water. "Jenna!" The call came from behind her, the tone urgency mixed with anger. She turned to see him striding down the hallway, footsteps echoing. Her gut tightened. He looked unsettled, wild-eyed, as if he had just run a marathon. "Ryan," she breathed, anxiety pinching her heart. "What are you doing out here?" He approached, his expression shifting from anger to fear as he saw her pale face. "You're shaking. What's going on?" She opened her mouth, but the words stuck, tangled in her throat. I didn't mean to come out like this. I thought it would be easier." "You thought what? That running away would solve everything?" His voice broke, raw and vulnerable. "I don't understand, Jenna. Just talk to me. His brow furrowed, frustration mixing with concern. I can't, she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. She wanted him to understand, to truly see the storm inside her. But how could she explain something that made her feel so small and afraid? Why not? His voice softened, that edge of anger fading. You think I can't handle it? That I wouldn't want to do this together? Don't tell me you're still thinking of leaving. Jenna looked away, guilt gnawing at her. What if you don't want this, Ryan? What if you hate me for it? Jenna. He reached for her, but she flinched, instinctually drawing back. That movement had silenced him, and the air thickened as realization dawned on both of them. Is this about the baby? He finally asked, his voice low. The word hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Ryan, she started, but he stepped back, confusion tightening his features. Look at me. He reached for her again. You don't get to just shut me out because you're scared. I deserve to know the truth. We both do. I'm afraid you'll look at me in a way I can't handle. She rushed out. I'm afraid I'll ruin everything. Ruin us. Jenna, he said, his voice firm, yet shaking. I love you. I'll never look at you like that. The truth of that statement turned the air electric, but doubt crept back in. You say that now, but... She choked on her words, anger and fear wrestling in her chest. What if you change your mind? What if I burden you? Silence stretched. An awkward space lingered with so much weight. Then Ryan took a step toward her, grounding them both amidst the turmoil. Share the burden with me, please. Jenna looked deep into his eyes and saw the hope dimming, the flicker of sadness that threatened to extinguish their love. She could feel that moment twist, the air thick with so many unsaid words. I have to tell you everything, Jenna whispered, finally summoning the courage she had thought lost. But you have to promise to stay, no matter what I say. Before he could respond, a sharp noise cut the air. The door swung open behind them, revealing the silhouette of a woman Jenna recognized all too well. A flash of recognition crossed Ryan's face as well. Ryan? The woman asked, and Jenna felt the world tilt into chaos as the scene before her began to collapse. She could feel the ground fall away, and suddenly, everything hung in the balance. The crack in the door was barely wide enough for a sliver of light to escape. Emily peered through the gap, her heart pounding in her chest. Was it too late? Should she have knocked? The argument echoed in her mind, the sound of raised voices and piercing accusations still fresh in her ears. I can't believe you would do this to me. Those words from Lucas hit her like a punch to the gut. The hurt etched deep lines across her forehead as she remembered his face twisting with fury and betrayal. Just moments ago, they had been standing in their cramped kitchen, the old wooden table a battleground strewn with the remnants of a half-eaten dinner. She had always thought their tiny apartment felt like home, warm, inviting. But tonight it suffocated her. Emily leaned her back against the cool wall, closing her eyes tightly, trying to block out the memory. In her mind, she replayed the moment his words had cut through her like glass. Who do you think you are? His disbelief, his fury, the way it seeped into her skin like poison was almost unbearable. She wished she could rewind, take back the slip of her tongue. Just tell me the truth, he had shouted, eyes burning with accusation, and then she'd let it all tumble out. Her secret spilled onto the table like shattered glass. Maybe it was because she had been so long in the shadows, holding on to her truth inside, where it festered. Or maybe it was because the weight of the lie was crushing every part of her. But now, standing in the narrow hallway, doubt wrapped itself around her chest, tight like a vice. She heard Lucas's voice again, softer this time, strained. I just need some space. The words landed like stones, heavy and unmovable. She opened her eyes, catching another glimpse through the crack. He was pacing, each step echoing unease. His hands raked through his hair, a tell she knew all too well. Her insides twisted, desperate to reach out and fix it all. But knowing deep down it wouldn't erase what she had set in motion. She swallowed hard, closing her eyes once more, breathing in the familiar sense of home, even as they turned bitter. The old couch, the half-burnt candles, the lingering smell of garlic from dinner. They had built so many memories here, shared so many laughs, but they were shattering now, the pieces scattering across the ground like ashes from a burnt-out fire. A soft knock sent her heart leaping, her eyes flying open. Emily! Jenna. Her best friend's voice was laced with concern, cutting through the tension. Emily pulled the door open, revealing Jenna's wide eyes, full of unasked questions. In that moment, Emily felt both ashamed and grateful for her presence. What happened? Jenna pressed, stepping over the threshold, her own worries tucked beneath layers of friendship. I don't want to talk about it. But as the words spilled out, a small part of her knew that was a lie. Embers of regret sparked beneath her skin. She wanted so desperately to explain, to have Jenna hug her tight and whisper that it would all work out. But all she could manage was a slight shake of her head. You can't just hide from this, Jenna said, her voice raw, a mix of worry and frustration. You guys were happy. Whatever it is, just talk it out. Happy? How can you say that? Do you know what I told him? She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the shame washing over her. What I've done? Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. Jenna opened, her mouth to speak, then closed it again, the knowledge she held rushing to the surface. You told him the truth. It's brave. Emily scoffed, the laugh sounding sardonic. Brave? Look where that bravery got me. There were no words to carry the weight of shame, of guilt. He can't even look at me. Maybe he just needs time, Jenna suggested, placing a calming hand on Emily's shoulder. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's also necessary. You can't hide from it. I didn't want it to hurt. Him, Jen, Voices erupted from the other room, Lucas's sharp tone slicing through the fragile air. I can't be with someone I don't trust. The vulnerability behind his anger sent chills down Emily's spine. Each word echoed, bearing the weight of finality. Emily's hands trembled as her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to fight back, to defend her choice to finally be honest about her past. But how could she stand up when she felt so hollow inside? The betrayal stung, not just for Lucas, but for herself. Was she reckless to believe that honesty was always the best policy? Get him back, Jenna urged, a steely resolve in her eyes. You owe him that much. Be honest, be vulnerable. You don't know what it's like, Emily burst out, her voice rising, panic rising with it. I can't stand the thought of losing him. He's everything. Then fight for him, Jenna insisted, her voice steady. Fight? The word lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Would fighting mean confronting her fear of losing him? But another voice echoed in her mind, the sting of anger, the bitter taste of betrayal. What if he doesn't want to fight? Emily shifted on her feet, heart racing. What if he's already made up his mind? Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but Emily inhaled sharply, her breath hitching as she caught sight of Lucas standing at the end of the hallway. His eyes met hers, a storm swirling in those depths. "Emily," he said, a mix of confusion and hurt etched on his face. 1,000 words sat on the tip of her tongue, but only silence filled the air. The weight of doubt hung heavily between them, and in that moment, as Lucas's face crumpled with pain, she realized that fighting might not be enough. As she opened her mouth to speak, the light flickered above them, and everything shifted in one dreadful moment. Lucas's phone buzzed on the table, a name flashing on the screen, one that left her breathless, heart sinking deep. It was her sister's name. The door swung open, and Eleanor froze, the sunlight spilling in like a spotlight on her shaky hands. Her heart raced, thumping loudly in her chest, drowning out the world beyond the threshold. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, but reality felt like a cold slap against her face. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" she managed to whisper. He stood there, tension radiating from his rigid shoulders. "I had to see you," Marcus said, his voice raw and filled with a desperation that echoed through the empty hallway. He looked older than she remembered. Lines of worry etched around his eyes. His skin pale and tired. The world had not been kind to him, and yet all Eleanor could feel was a swell of anger and heartbreak. "Had to?" she choked out, stepping back, her back pressing against the wall. "You had a choice. You made yours." His expression shifted, pain flashing over his face. "I know. I messed up, Eleanor, but you deserve to know the truth." She scoffed, arms crossed tightly over her chest, as if to shield herself from the avalanche of emotions threatening to engulf her. "The truth? What you call the truth is just another way to avoid taking responsibility for the lies." Marcus took a step closer, and she instinctively recoiled. "Please, just let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you took everything. My trust, my heart, my dreams. You think that a few words can fix what you broke?" Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. The air thickened, swirling between them with unspoken memories. They had been inseparable once. The laughter shared late at night, the whispered promises of forever. But forever had morphed into endless nights of doubt and betrayal, twisted into pain. "Eleanor," he started, but the plea in his voice made her stomach churn. "When I left, it wasn't just about you. I was battling things you couldn't see." A wave of frustration washed over her, the memories clashing against the walls of her defenses. It felt like a lifetime, ago when she had trusted him, when they had been surrounded by friends, life spilling with potential, brimming with love. "You left me, Marcus," she shouted, her voice breaking. "You left me when I needed you the most." He took a deep breath, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jeans, as if he were afraid they might reach out for her. "I was scared of everything, of us. I thought I was doing the right thing." Eleanor felt her heart harden, the memories flooding back, drowning her in tidal waves of betrayal. "Doing the right thing? By hurting me, by making me doubt everything I believed in." His gaze dropped, and in that moment he seemed smaller, like a boy lost in the shadows of a man he had yet to become. "I never stopped loving you, though," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Even when I was gone." The confession hung between them, raw and heavy. It was a truth that felt like a dagger twisting in her heart. How could he say that after all this time? How could he ask for forgiveness when he was the reason for her shattered soul? Eleanor took a step forward, her anger quaking. "Love isn't enough, Marcus. You made your choice. You decided that you didn't want to fight for us. You didn't want to face what we were." "It was never that simple," he shot back, the tension sparking in the space between them like tiny explosions. "You weren't there. I was drowning in things I couldn't control." For a brief moment, Eleanor softened. She could see it, the pain lurking just beneath his surface. But the truth had its own weight, and it settled like a stone between them. "You could have talked to me. You could have trusted me, but instead you broke me." "Eleanor," he said again, voice trembling. "I'm sorry." The word made her throat tighten, a bitter taste flooding her mouth. Sorry. A lifeline offered too late, not enough to save what they had once shared. Sorry doesn't bring back the nights I spent wondering if you were dead or just gone, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Sorry doesn't fix broken hearts. Tears brimmed in her eyes, blurring the periphery of her vision. You don't get to come back and act like everything is okay. The truth is, you betrayed me. He stepped forward, desperation etched into every line of his face. But I love you. I have to make you see. Eleanor inhaled sharply, the weight of his admission hitting like a thunderclap. The force of it rattled her resolve, sending a tremor through her heart. Was love enough to conquer the mountains of hurt between them? Or was it merely an illusion, a ghost haunting her steps? Love, she whispered, uncertainty weaving into her thoughts. What if it's too late? He was so close now. She could see the shimmering hope in his eyes. It's never too late. We can start over. We can find a way. An almost imperceptible pulse enveloped them, charged with gravity and fear. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words pulling her closer. She wanted to believe. She wanted to let go of the pain, but the wall she had built felt impossible to tear down. But before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind him. They both turned, startled. The sound of glass shattering pierced the air, and shadows loomed ominously near. Eleanor's heart jolted in her chest, and as panic surged through her veins, she realized the truth was more complicated than she could comprehend. "Eleanor, wait!" Marcus called, but she was already stepping back, uncertainty flooding her mind, the reality of their fractured trust now mingling with a new threat. Or perhaps a chance too late. The shadows grew larger, the footsteps approaching, and as Eleanor glanced back at Marcus, she realized she stood at a crossroads. Can the truth of love survive in the face of chaos? Or would it crumble under the weight of their past? The moment Claire stepped into the cafe, she felt everything shatter around her. The aroma of roasted coffee beans, usually comforting, seemed to suffocate her instead. Her heart pounded audibly in her ears. There, sitting at their usual table, was Jake, with a woman she had never seen before. They were laughing, their heads bent close together, over steaming mugs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, just outside those glass doors. Her breath caught in her throat. She thought she had prepared for this, but the sight of him with someone else felt like a punch to the gut. How had it come to this? Just last week, they had talked about building a life together. Yet here he was, a smile plastered on his face, shining brighter than she had ever seen. Claire hesitated, rooted to the spot. Should she turn on her heel and leave? But a quiet, desperate voice inside urged her to keep moving forward. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was overreacting. The truth, however, gripped her with icy fingers. "Hey, you okay?" Sophie, her best friend, whispered beside her, glancing toward the table. Sophie had tagged along for what was supposed to be a fun pick-me-up, but now noticed the shifting weight in the air. I don't know," Claire stammered. Her voice barely a whisper. Her hands trembled as she avoided eye contact with Sophie's concerned gaze. Instead, she focused on Jake, with his easy laughter, the way he brushed a lock of hair behind the woman's ear. An intimate gesture Claire had thought was only meant for her. "Let's just go, okay? We can grab coffee at that other place," Sophie said, her fingers brushing Claire's arm, gently, trying to pull her away. "No." The word came out sharper than Claire intended. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to think through the tempest of emotions tearing at her heart. "I need to hear this." As they walked farther into the cafe, the noise of chatter and clinking dishes blurred into a dull roar. Claire's pulse quickened with every step. She could feel the heaviness of doubt closing in around her, but she needed answers. She had loved Jake with everything she had, and if there was a shred of truth left in their relationship, she had to face him. "Claire, think this through," Sophie urged. But Claire was already moving. She felt a mix of bravery and foolishness. Maybe it was sheer desperation that made her stride over to the table, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like thunder. "Jake," she said, her voice trembling, but resolute. Both Jake and the woman turned to her. The laughter faded instantly. "Hey, Claire!" Jake's cheerful demeanor faltered, confusion clouding his features as he stood up. "Who's this?" The question escaped her lips before she could stop it. It came out more accusatory than she intended, but everything felt chaotic, like a runaway train she couldn't control. "This is Mia," Jake stammered, glancing between Claire and Mia, who remained silent, her eyes wide as they darted between the two of them. "Are you dating?" Claire asked, her heart sinking as she spoke the words aloud. Each syllable felt like a stone thrown into dark waters, creating ripples of pain she couldn't escape. The idea of him moving on without her settled in her stomach like poison. "Claire, wait!" Jake began, but Claire cut him off. "Wait! You want me to wait?" Her voice rose as she fought the urge to cry. "You've been seeing her behind my back, and I'm supposed to wait for what? For you to explain why this is happening?" "It's not what you think," he said, his hands raised, palms out like she was about to strike. "Mia is just a friend. I promise." "You expect me to believe that?" Claire laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in her chest. "I cannot believe you would stand there and lie to me. What kind of friendship involves flirting and sitting so close? Do you think I am blind?" Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between them like a trapped animal. "I didn't know about you," she finally spoke up, her voice tremulous. "I swear, I just met Jake today." "Then what's this?" Claire snapped. looking back at Jake. "You bring her here? To our spot?" The warmth in her throat turned to ice, and she took a step back, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet. "Are you breaking up with me?" "Claire." He took a step forward, desperation in his eyes. But Claire could only shake her head, not trusting herself to speak without collapsing. Silence filled the space between them, a chasm expanding with every passing second. Claire felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. The laughter that had once surrounded their moments now vanished, replaced with an unbearable heaviness. "I don't think I can do this anymore," she finally whispered, her voice trembling, her vision blurring. She could feel tears brimming, and in that instant, clarity struck her like a lightning bolt. The love they had built, the dreams they had spun together over late-night talks, felt like ashes in her hands. "No, Claire!" Jake's voice cracked, desperation leaking through his facade. "Please, this is a misunderstanding." But Claire turned away, her heart aching, knowing she was taking the first step into the unknown, into a future that felt more terrifying than she could bear. Each step away from him felt heavier than the last. "Claire." Jake's voice cracked like the glass surrounding them. And with that, she stepped outside, the wind hitting her face like ice. It felt liberating, yet stung, with a deep sorrow. But her heart beat louder now, not for Jake, but for herself, for the promise of healing. She couldn't look back. Not this time. Then she heard it. A familiar ring. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. It was a text from Jake. "Wait. It's not over." The weight of the words sank in. Fear clawed at her as she stood on the brink of a choice. Whether to turn around or walk away for good. The air was thick with regret. Claire stood at the edge of the old playground, her heart pounding like the rusted swings that creaked in the wind. It was the same place where she last felt free, where laughter filled the air instead of the bitter silence that now enveloped her. "Why did I ever listen to him?" she whispered, the words slipping from her lips as if breaking through the surface of water. She hugged her arms to her chest, squeezing tight as if she could squeeze the memories away. The peeling paint on the slides, the unkempt grass. It all felt like a mockery of the joy they once shared. "Because you were desperate," a voice cracked behind her. It was Michael, his tone heavy, like the relentless clouds above. He stepped forward, his silhouette stretching across the playground, the light barely reaching him. "You wanted someone to believe in?" Claire's breath hitched. She turned, her eyes meeting his. He looked older, wearier. The boy she loved transformed into a man heavy, with choices. "You don't know anything," she shot back. But even as the words left her mouth, the truth clawed at her insides. "I know you," he replied softly. Stepping closer, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I know you can't hide from it forever. You thought he was different. You thought..." He faltered, and the weight of his unfinished sentence hung between them. "I thought he could save me," Claire shouted, the anger erupting like a volcano, sudden, fierce, and all-consuming. She held onto that anger like a lifeline. "You don't get it, Michael. I was drowning. I wanted something real." Michael's gaze flickered. Pain, disappointment, regret. "And now, where does that leave you?" The question lingered in the air, sharp as broken glass. Claire looked down at her shoes scuffed with dirt. "Here," she admitted, her voice small, trembling. "Alone." Silence washed over them, thick and mournful, like the quiet before a storm. She half expected rain to come, to match the turmoil inside her, but the sky only hung, grey and stoic. "You made a choice," he finally said, his voice low. "You chose him over us." She clenched her fists, nails pressing into her palms. "How is it that you can make me feel guilty? You walked away, Michael. You left me when I needed you most." He flinched, his expression darkening. "I was trying to protect you. I couldn't watch you disappear into his darkness." She shook her head, fighting back tears. "He promised me everything. Love, freedom, safety." Michael stepped closer again, the gap closing between them. "Promises don't mean anything if they're built on lies. He lied to you, Claire." With those words, the dam inside her broke. She spun away, her feet carrying her to the edge of the playground where the grass met the concrete path. "No, you're wrong. It was real for a moment. It felt real." "Did it?" he challenged, his voice rising above her wild heartbeats. "Was it worth losing yourself? Was it worth losing me?" At that, the flood of emotions washed over her. Claire could hear the echoes of their past together. Late-night talks, laughter shared over ice cream, the way they crafted dreams together under starlit skies. A tear rolled down her cheek, tracing a path of despair. "I thought I could forget you. I thought he'd be everything you weren't. But I was so wrong." Michael's expression softened, a myriad of emotions flickering across his face. "And now?" he urged gently, stepping even closer, the air between them crackling with tension. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice shaking. I wanted to feel something. Anything." "Feeling something doesn't always mean it's right," Michael murmured, lifting a hand, his fingers brushing against her arm. "Sometimes it can leave scars deeper than anything else." Their eyes locked, and for a suspended moment, everything else faded. The playground, the heavy clouds, the world outside. It was just them, suspended in the bittersweet memory of what they had lost. "You were my light, Michael," she confessed, tears falling freely now, an unguarded vulnerability enveloping her. "He was my distraction." "You still have a choice," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do I?" She let out a shaky breath. "I feel trapped." "Then break free," he urged, his eyes burning with intensity. "Let yourself be scared. Let yourself feel." "But I don't even know who I am anymore," she admitted, the rawness of her confession pulling at her heart. "Then let's find out together." Michael took a step back, giving her space, but keeping his eyes locked on hers. "I'm not leaving you again. Not if you don't want me to." Claire's heart raced. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Panic clawed at her throat as she tried to grasp what this meant. Hope, betrayal, everything she had risked coming flooding back. And just as she decided to step forward, the sky broke open. Rain fell in heavy sheets, drenching everything in an instant. Claire gasped as droplets soaked her clothes, chilling her to the bone. But in that moment, she felt alive, raw, exposed. She turned to Michael, laughter mixed with tears spilling from her lips. "What now?" "Now," he said, smiling through the storm. "We go find ourselves somewhere dry." But as they turned to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows of the playground, and Claire's heart stopped. The man who had promised her safety stood watching, darkness lurking in his eyes, a sinister smile on his lips. She felt the ground tremble beneath her, betrayal blooming again. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The room was filled with a heavy silence. The air crackled with unspoken words and a million unasked questions. Jacob stood by the window, staring out at the autumn leaves swirling in the wind, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The fading sunlight turned the world outside into a blurry watercolor painting, but inside, everything was sharp and painful. "Jacob!" Zara's voice broke through the stillness, soft yet firm. She stood by the door, her arms crossed tightly, as if holding herself. "Together. Can we talk?" He turned slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a steel beam. "Talk." His voice was thick with bitterness. "About what, exactly?" "How you've just decided to leave everything behind." At his words, Zara flinched. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she quickly blinked them away, her expression shifting to something resolute. "I didn't want it to be this way," she said. "You know that." "Do I?" He took a step toward her, his brow furrowing. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels more like a betrayal. What I did was for us, Jake." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "This move can change everything. I can't squeeze into your dreams while I suffocate in mine." His heart raced at her words, but he didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much they stung. A person doesn't just uproot their life without at least having the decency to talk it through. You could have included me in the decision. I thought we were a team." A flicker of regret twisted her features, only to be replaced by a steely resolve. "You don't understand. I can't stay here any longer. I feel like I'm drowning." The silence hung heavy, wrapping around them both. Jacob turned back to the window, the brilliant orange and yellow leaves flickering in the cool breeze. "And what about us? You're just going to walk away?" "Maybe we need to figure out what us really means," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want me to do? Hold myself back for the rest of my life?" He was silent. It felt like a punch had landed in his gut. The realization sank in like a stone. The two of them were not the team he had believed in all along. Maybe they were on different paths altogether, paths that no longer intersected. "Do you love him?" The question escaped his lips before he could hold it back, sharp and sudden, like a knife cutting through the air. Zara gasped, her face pales. "You think I would never—" Her voice wavered, but he could see the truth in her eyes. The slightest twitch of her mouth, the way her fingers clenched and unclenched. "It's the only explanation," Jacob said, the words tumbling out of him like a waterfall. "You're leaving, and it's not just for your career." "You can't just put that on me," she replied, anger boiling beneath her calm demeanor. "I'm trying to find myself, and yes, it's scary. But it doesn't mean I've found someone else." "Then why have you been so distant?" His heart pounded furiously against his chest. "You'll leave me for a life you think you deserve while I'm left standing here, like some faded echo of a life we used to have." Zara took a step closer, her voice softening. "I didn't want it to come to this. I'm terrified, Jacob. Just as terrified as you are. But I need to go." "Just like that?" He scoffed, a mixture of pain and anger flaring up inside him. "You're going to turn your back on everything we built?" "Built?" She laughed bitterly. "Is that what you think this is? Some grand structure made of promises and dreams? It's crumbling, Jake." and it's time for me to find another way. Is that what you want? His voice trembled, revealing the vulnerability he tried to hide. You really want to walk away from what we've shared? Don't you even want to try? I do. Tears streamed down her cheeks now, her composure cracking. But trying isn't enough anymore. I can't keep pretending this is what I want. I need to discover who I am alone. Suddenly, the realization descended like a weight in his chest. Jacob took a shaky breath. He was losing her, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His mind raced through memories of laughter, of late-night talks and morning coffees. They had both changed, but the love remained tethered in hope, now slowly unraveling. He took a step back, the distance between them widening like the chasm that threatened to engulf him. Do you think this will make you happy? He asked, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the tremor under it. That just running away will somehow fix what's broken? Her gaze fell to the floor, as if searching for answers in the patterned tiles. Then she lifted her head, looking into his eyes. I don't know, she whispered. But I can't just stand here waiting for everything to fall apart. The silence settled again, thick and suffocating. They both breathed heavily, feeling the enormity of their choices, the dread of the unknown. What if I can't let you go? Jacob said, his voice barely above a murmur, raw with emotion. I don't want to hurt you, Sarah said slowly, a tremor in her voice. But you have to let me make my choice. The truth is, suddenly, the sound of his phone buzzing on the table broke through the tension. They both turned toward it. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't looked at it in hours. Reaching for it, he hesitated when he saw the name flashing on the screen. Mia. That name felt like a knife piercing through him, cutting, deep and raw. Who is it? Sarah asked, her face pale as she processed the change in his expression. Just... He paused, glancing between the phone and her. It's nobody, he lied. But the crack in his voice betrayed him. They stood on the brink of an ending. The air dense with unresolved emotions. The future a vast and frightening unknown. As he looked at her, tears streamed down her cheeks, and he felt the weight of their shattered dreams swirling into the unknown. Henry stood in the flickering candlelight, his heart pounding like a trapped bird. The room smelled of dust and faded memories, but all he could focus on was the letter clutched in his hand. It was crumpled and stained, its corners worn from his relentless grip. Each word burned in his mind like fire, igniting an ocean of anger that threatened to pull him under. He could still hear Ella's voice, sweet and soft, telling him everything would be okay. But that was before she betrayed him. Before he discovered that she had shared their most sacred moments with the very man who had stolen everything from him. He took a shaky breath, his pulse racing. This is it, he whispered to himself, feeling the prick of tears forming in his eyes. The plan was reckless, but his heart churned with a need for justice, for retribution that would match the depth of his betrayal. But was this revenge, or just blind rage? The door creaked open, and his brother Jake stepped inside. There was an unease in Jake's eyes, a flicker of concern that told Henry he knew something was off. You're back early, Jake said, trying for a light tone. I thought you were with Ella. Henry's jaw tightened. That's the problem. What do you mean? The confusion on Jake's face morphed into alarm. Then you didn't see her text, Henry said, his words slicing through the air. He held up the letter, his hand trembling. Wait, what? Jake leaned in, eyes narrowing as he read. She did this? Henry couldn't look his brother in the eyes. Instead, he stared at the wall, feeling the weight of betrayal crush him. She didn't just tell him about me. She gave him everything. The secrets, the moments, everything I thought was ours. Jake's expression turned to stone. He crossed his arms, his brow furrowing. And you want to confront her? Confronting isn't enough. I want her to feel what I feel, Henry admitted. His voice low yet unyielding, a storm brewing in his chest. She needs to know what it's like to lose everything. Henry, is this really the path you want to take? Revenge can destroy you, Jake warned, stepping closer. Isn't that the point? Silence filled the room, heavy and thick like the tension in the air before a thunderstorm. Jake shook his head. Disappointment etched on his features. Ella isn't worth losing yourself over. You love her. Remember that. But she chose him, Henry snapped, his knuckles white as he gripped the letter tighter. She made her choice. Maybe she regretted it, Jake said carefully, sensing the desperation in his brother's voice. Maybe she's scared. Listen, maybe you need to talk to her, not threaten her. Henry's chest tightened at the thought. Deep inside, a flicker of doubt ignited. What if Ella was just scared? What if this was a mistake? But the truth was undeniable, boiling in his veins. You don't know what it feels like to be cast aside like trash. Jake's eyes softened. I might not, but I know what it's like to make choices you can't take back. Let's think this through, okay? Henry turned away, heartache mingling with rage. If Jake couldn't support him now, what good was brotherhood? You don't get it. You've always been the golden child, the one everyone loves. But Henry, Jake interrupted, exasperated but still measured. Cut this out. You're spiraling. I'm being real, Henry shot back, feeling frantic, like the ground was shifting beneath him. I can't let her do this to me, to our life. I work hard for everything I have. I deserve better. That's all true, Jake replied, calm now. But breaking her will not fix what's broken in you. It'll just make it worse. Henry paused, letting his brother's words hang in the air. The hesitation grew inside him like a gathering storm, wresting control from the anger that surged through him. Jake moved closer, lowering his voice. What if you talk to her, like an adult? She might... I don't want to hear her apologies, Henry said sharply. Maybe it's not about her, Jake suggested. Maybe it's about you finding peace. A silence enveloped them, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. The tension was almost comforting, like a familiar ache that wouldn't leave. But then Henry remembered the bitterness he felt, the humiliation of betrayal coursing through him like ice. Looking at Jake, he felt a part of him wanting to resist, to cling to his desire for revenge. Suddenly, the phone buzzed on the table beside him, shattering the heavy moment. Henry's breath quickened. It was a message from Ella. He hesitated, the urge to read it battling against the anger that screamed at him to delete it. With shaking fingers, he opened it. I'm sorry, Henry. Please, let's talk. His heart twisted painfully. The lure of conversation, of resolution, clawed at him, but so did the image of her with another man. His mind flashed back to the countless times they laughed, whispered dreams under the stars, shared moments of pure bliss. "Henry?" Jake's voice pierced through the chaos, grounding him. "What's in the message?" With a heavy sigh, he dropped the phone on the table, feeling hollow. "It doesn't matter." But in that instant, everything shifted within him. An internal battle igniting. As Henry turned away from Jake, the candlelight flickered in a whisper of shadows, casting a dim glow over his conflicted soul. "But it does," he murmured, facing the door. He needed to confront her. But would it be for revenge or for love? Just as he made up, his mind, the sound of footsteps echoed outside, and the air thickened with tension. Ella was coming. A gunshot rang out, echoing through the cold night air, and Amelia's heart stopped. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but never like this. She had watched her brother Sam crumble to the ground, the vibrant life in his eyes snuffed out in an instant. The laughter they had shared just hours ago slid away, like water through her fingers, replaced by a hollow, bone-deep fear. She knelt beside him, her palms pressing against the wound, her fingers slick with warmth that felt all wrong. "Sam! Sam, hold on!" Her voice trembled, breaking under the weight of that single word. Hold. But he was fading, the light of recognition dimming in his gaze as he struggled to breathe. "Amelia," he gasped, his voice a whisper. "You have to go." "No, I am not leaving you." Panic surged through her veins, hot and electric. She bit back tears, her body shaking with the effort to hold him close, to somehow wish away the reality of the moment. He smiled weakly, the corners of his mouth lifting, just enough to catch a flicker of nostalgia. "Remember when we were kids? The tree house? And the time you thought you could fly?" A nervous laugh escaped her lips, bitter and raw. "Yeah, and you pushed me off. I broke my arm." "Funny how you never stopped climbing," he said, his breath becoming slower, more labored. "Don't say that, Sam. Just stay with me." She tried to make sense of the chaos swirling around them, the distant sound of police sirens, the voices echoing in the dark, an eerie reminder that life was still moving forward outside their bubble of tragedy. "Amelia, I need you to listen." He grabbed her hand with what little strength he had left, his grip warm but fading. "You have to be strong, for both of us." She shook her head, feeling the tears cascade down her cheeks, hot and unrelenting. "No, you can't leave me. We're supposed to get out of this town together, remember? Just you and me against the world." "But I'm already gone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his features, and in that moment, something deep within her shattered. As she squeezed his hand, the night sky seemed to close in on them, the stars dimming under the weight of their shared pain. She felt an overwhelming rush of emotions. Anger, despair, but above all, an aching love. "You can't give up. We've been through too much. Please just hang on a little longer." Sam's eyes turned glassy, but somewhere inside that piercing storm, there was clarity. "You need to forgive him." A shudder coursed through her. The thought of their father, a man whose absence had been like a wrenching scar for years, tightened her chest. He doesn't deserve forgiveness, not after what he did. Forgiveness isn't for him, it's for you. You need to be free, Amelia. His voice faltered, and a sob choked in her throat. "Free," she repeated, the word tasting bitter. "You're leaving me, Sam. How can I be free when I'm losing you? Live well." he said. And those two words, simple and heavy, hung between them like a lead weight. Please, for me. Silence stretched, wrapping around them like a blanket of frozen despair. She felt the weight of every unspoken word, every dream and regret, as if they were all piling up on her heart. When she finally managed to speak, her voice quivered. I didn't get to tell you. I was going to surprise you with a trip. Just a little getaway, you know? Us against the world, just like we always wanted. His breathing was slow, almost imperceptible. Make that trip, Amelia, and know that I'll be there with you. I can't, she said. You can't just leave me. I'm scared. A shudder ripped through him, and the knowledge that she was witnessing the last moments of her brother's life tore at her heart. You're stronger than you think. His voice faded, a threadbare whisper, as his eyelids fluttered close. No, she screamed, shaking him gently. His head lolled to the side, and she came face to face with the moment she had feared for years. She kissed his forehead, tasting the saltiness of her own tears, and for a brief moment they were children again, sitting in that treehouse, dreaming of flying. The world around her blurred. Sirens wailed in the distance, and footsteps hurried closer. But all she could hear was the oppressive silence pressing down on her. Then, in a staggering rush, it all shattered. A figure appeared in the shadows, a man with a familiar face she had long sworn to forget. Their father, here, in this moment of despair. His voice, low and gravelly, cut through the silence. Amelia. Her body tightened with rage and disbelief. You're the reason he's gone. She stood, fury blazing in her chest, choking on a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Please. Nothing you say can make this right. She was shaking now, every fibre of her being screaming for justice, for him to feel the pain he had inflicted on their family. Let me explain, he pleaded, his eyes darting nervously between her and Sam's lifeless body. With a trembling breath, she prepared for the emotional onslaught ahead. But just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket, a strange reminder that the world would keep spinning, indifferent to their grief. As she fumbled to answer it, her heart raced, the unending questions swirling in her mind. But she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of the fallout, the collision of past and present, and she had to hold on to her resolve for both of them. Zara held her breath as she looked at the door. She never thought she'd be here, not after everything that had happened. It felt surreal, like watching a scene from a movie where the protagonist hesitates just before stepping into the unknown. But she was no actress. This was real. Her heart raced, a drumbeat echoing fear and hope all at once. Are you sure you want to do this? Whispered Amy, her best friend. Amy's voice wavered, betraying her own uncertainty. Zara could see her best friend's fingers tapping nervously against the doorframe, a distraction from the weight of what lay beyond. Zara nodded, though inside a storm brewed. I need to know. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. It creaked on its hinges, a warning of what lurked inside. Dim light filtered through the cracked window, casting shadows that danced on the walls. The room was nearly empty, just a table and an old couch, yet the air was thick with memories. It smelled of dust, stale coffee, and unanswered questions. Sarah, is that you? A voice echoed from the darkness. It was fragile, worn out, but unmistakably familiar. Her father. They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. She had been certain he wanted nothing to do with her after the fight, a battle that tore their family apart. "Dad," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It's me." As she stepped into the light, she saw him sitting there, an aging man with a beard that had turned grey. The years hadn't been kind, and the guilt flooded her like a tidal wave. He looked older, more tired than she remembered. "Why are you here?" His voice was distant, guarded, as if he were afraid of being hurt again. I just wanted to talk," she said, taking another step forward. Each movement felt like walking on glass, the air between them cracking under the weight of past hurts. "I need to know why you left, why you didn't fight for us." His eyes darkened, shadows creeping in. "You don't understand, Zara. I was fighting a battle of my own." She clenched her fists, frustration boiling beneath her skin. "You think I don't get it? You think it was easy for me? Mom cried every night after you walked out. You chose your demons over us." Her voice cracked, revealing the years of bottled-up feelings. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The seconds ticked by like hours. Her father looked down, a painful regret settling on his features. But instead of the anger she expected, she felt sorrow wrapping itself around her heart. She had wanted to blame him, but seeing him like this, the vulnerability filled her with something else. Compassion. "I was scared," he finally admitted, each word falling like stones. "I was drowning and didn't know how to save myself, let alone you or your mother." The admission hung in the air, raw and exposed. Zara swallowed hard, the weight of his truth breaking through her defenses. She couldn't blame him for feeling lost. "You could have tried," she said softly. "You could have reached out. I thought it would be easier to let go, to disappear. I was so wrong." His voice cracked like an old tree limb, and Sarah felt a part of her begin to thaw. A fragment of the little girl who still believed in her father's love, hidden away under the hurt. "I wanted you to be there for me," she whispered, battling the tears that welled in her eyes. The memories flooded back. Soccer games he'd missed. Birthdays without him. The night she fell off her bike and had to call her mother. Alone and scared. "I know," he said. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you both by leaving. But I see now, it just made everything so much worse." The truth of his apology settled between them like a thin strand of hope. But it felt precarious, like a single thread holding together the weight of their shattered relationship. "Do you think we can fix it?" she whispered, fear clawing at her throat. "Can we still be a family?" He looked at her with eyes that spoke of a weary soul trying to find a reason to hope. "I don't know if we can go back to what we were, but I want to try." Silence stretched again, wrapping them both in a fragile embrace. Just as a flicker of possibility began to light their path, the moment shattered like glass when the front door swung open. "Dad, are you here?" a young voice called out. It was Jonathan, her younger brother. He didn't know she was here, and Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. "Go out the back, Sarah," her father said urgently. "Please, I don't want him to see us like this." "But just go. I'll call you later." It felt like being pulled apart. She didn't want to leave, not now, not when a chance at healing hung in the air. But she also didn't want to hurt Jonathan. He had already lost so much. With a heavy heart, Sarah nodded. She turned to walk toward the back door, but just as she reached for the handle, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Wait. Promise me you'll come back. Promise me you'll let me be in your life again, her father said earnestly, desperation woven through his words. I promise, she replied, half a whisper, half a vow. As she opened the door, a sense of dread washed over her. What if Jonathan couldn't bear to see their father again? What if this fragile moment of connection slipped away forever? Suddenly, she heard the door creak open wider. Jonathan walked in, wide-eyed, and stopped dead in his tracks. The look on his face was a mix of confusion and dread. Who's she, Dad? He asked. And in that moment, Sarah's heart shattered again, the reality of her family's fracture hanging like a ghost in the air. She was ready to confront the past, but was the future really within their grasp? Or would it slip through her fingers like so many lost hopes before? Ella stared at the door, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She was 5 minutes late for their meeting, but the feeling of dread wrapped around her throat like a heavy necklace. What had once been the bright promise of love now felt like a shadow, a stretched-out torment that filled the air between them. When she finally pushed the door open, the sterile smell of the coffee shop hit her. It was the same place where they had shared laughter and secrets, where they had planned for a future that now felt absurd. Jason sat at a corner table, his head bent over his phone. He looked up as she entered, his expression neutral, too neutral. For a moment, the weight of unspoken words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Ella, he said, setting the phone down as if he were putting aside a dangerous weapon. You made it. She forced a smile. Traffic, you know. The excuse felt like cheap fabric, flimsy and full of holes. She could feel his eyes dissecting her, searching for the truth she was trying to mask. Right. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. She caught a glimpse of vulnerability lurking behind his bravado, but it flickered away like a gasp of breath in cold air. Silence fell between them, sharp and jagged. Ella looked out the window at the rain streaking down the glass, each drop a reminder of their unraveling. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. I don't think we can keep doing this, Jason said, suddenly, his voice low but firm. The statement crashed against her like a wave, leaving her breathless. What are you saying? Panic coursed through her veins. She felt her stomach drop as reality settled in. The implications were clear, even if she refused to accept them. He closed his eyes for just a moment, as if bracing himself. I can't pretend anymore, Ella. I can't act like everything is fine. It's not. We're not. A lump formed in her throat, all the hedged emotions spilling over the dam she had built. What do you mean? We can fix this. We can talk, work it out. Her voice wavered, desperation creeping in like the evening shadows. He shook his head, a sad smile tugging at his lips. I don't think we can. Ella cerró los ojos, una ola de recuerdos estrellando sobre ella. Their laughter at summer picnics, late-night talks that turned into dawn, his warmth wrapping around her on chilly nights. Those moments felt like another life, one she had clutched tightly, but now they slipped from her fingers, wishful thinking. Jason, please. The words faltered. She didn't know how to plead without breaking. Ella, listen. I've felt it for a while now. We're not the same people we were. It's like we're just going through the motions. His voice broke, an unsteady confession that echoed inside her chest. We just need to remember. Ella leaned in, urgency flaring. What about that trip to the coast? We had so much fun. We can remind each other. That was months ago. His face twisted, with something like pain. Like he didn't want to say the words, but they were forcing their way out. Things have changed. You know it as much as I do. A cold shiver of betrayal ran through her, tightening her chest. Have you been talking to someone? Is there someone else? Jason's face paled. What? No. It's not like that. This is about us. You and me. Then how can you just throw away everything we built? Tears stung her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. He looked pained, like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. I'm not throwing it away. I'm being real about it. Real? She spat, anger rising in her throat. You're choosing to walk away. You've given up. No, he said, his voice steadier now. I'm trying to save us both from falling apart in a way that only hurts more. She wanted to argue, to fling her frustration at him until he saw reason. But in her heart, she felt the walls crumbling, the foundation of their love shifting beneath them. Silence stretched, out again, heavy and painful. Ella wiped at her eyes, trying to hold on to whatever dignity she had left. Jason's expression softened, and he leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. I care about you, I really do. But I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep pretending. We're hurting each other, and it's not fair. The truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. Her chest ached as she realized it wasn't just him breaking something. It was them, twisting apart like old roots that had grown too intertwined. What do we do now? She whispered, her voice barely audible. He looked her straight in the eye. I don't know. It was the honesty in his tone that broke her. All the unshed tears spilled over as she shook her head, unable to face the reality of what lay ahead. Ella, he started, reaching out as if wanting to close the distance between them. No, she pulled back, fighting against a rush of emotions. Don't. I can't hear any more excuses. As she stood up, the chair scraped harshly against the floor, a violent sound in the quiet cafe. The world inside her shifted, and she took a shaky breath. It was time to leave, but the emptiness settled in her stomach like stone. Halfway to the door, she paused. The weight of his gaze on her shoulders felt like chains. You'll regret this, she breathed, knowing she sounded desperate. To regret is to feel. I think we've lost that. And with that, Ella stepped out into the rain, her heart heavy with confusion and hurt. She could feel her world fracturing behind her. And as she walked away, the glances that lingered faded into choking silence. A farewell that echoed long before she felt free. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the empty house. A sharp final note in the symphony of despair that had filled the air between Ava and her father. For a moment, she stood frozen in place, her heart racing, uncertain if the pain piercing her chest was more from her explosion of anger or the quiet whisper of betrayal. Why can't you just understand? She screamed, her voice trembling, as if it were trying to break free from a cage of hurt. The words hung around her like ghosts, unwanted and heavy. Her father, Michael, had stepped closer, the hard lines of his face deepening as he struggled to keep his own emotions in check. It's not that simple, Eva. His voice wavered, revealing just enough vulnerability to let her know this was difficult for him too. But she felt no sympathy. "It is that simple. You made your choice," she shot back, each word stabbing through the silence, igniting the memories of her mother that hovered just out of reach. "You chose her over us, over me." Her chest heaved, each breath a mixture of anger and sorrow threatening to spill over. Michael's shoulders slumped, and he turned away, staring at the wall as if it might offer him some comfort. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of the man underneath the father, the one who wrestled with the weight of his decisions, who couldn't escape his own mistakes. Her heart twisted. "I never wanted this," he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. "I loved your mother more than anything, but sometimes love isn't enough." There it was, a truth laid bare in the dim light of the kitchen, which felt colder than any winter day. Ava closed her eyes, feeling the walls of the house around her tighten, suffocating her memories of happier days. The laughter, the warmth, the bright sun filtering in through the windows during Sunday breakfasts, now vanished, replaced by the bitter taste of disappointment. "But you made a choice," she cried, her voice filling with anguish. "You had the chance to stand by her, to fight for us, and you just turned your back." The tears she had fought to hold back now streamed down her cheeks, each droplet a reminder of what was lost. "It was not just me." "You don't know anything about her," he said defensively, his eyes hardening. "All you see is the betrayal." Ava took a shaky breath, feeling a storm swell within her. "That's all I ever wanted. Someone to stay, to fight beside me. Not just run away because things got complicated." Her words dripped with raw emotion, each one landing like a punch in the gut. For a moment, silence floated between them, thick and heavy. A clock ticked in the background, reminding them of the time slipping away. Time they could not reclaim. But then Michael spoke again, his voice cracking. "I don't know how to fix this." And that simple admission shattered whatever walls she'd been trying to keep up. All that was left were the pieces of her broken trust scattered around them, sharp and painful. "I wanted you to be my hero," she admitted, barely able to breathe as she felt the weight of those words. "Not my greatest disappointment." Tears streamed freely down her face now, each drop releasing a part of her anger and disappointment into the air. Michael's expression faltered, pain flashing in his eyes as he searched hers, looking for the little girl he once knew. And with each heart-wrenching moment that passed, an all-too-familiar flicker of guilt ignited in his gaze. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought..." He started, but faltered, his mind racing. "Thought what?" she snapped, her vulnerability giving way to anger. "That if you just walked away, we'd be okay." He fell silent, but Ava could see the gears turning in his mind. Would he dare to admit his fear? Would he ever understand the depths of her loss? "Sometimes, when you love someone," he began haltingly, "you realize it's too late, and you don't know how to walk back." Her heart sank further. This wasn't just about him. It was about her mother, the unfulfilled promise of a life together. "You can't just throw away everything we had, Dad. She was fighting for you." At this, Michael turned his gaze away, clenching his fists as if the weight of their shared memories were too much to bear. The scent of cold coffee drifted through the kitchen, mingling with the palpable tension. Both of them were searching for the right words, something that could mend a situation long since broken. I loved her, he murmured, barely audible. Then why didn't you act like it? She stepped closer, the anger still burning, mixed with sorrow and a desperate need for resolution. Another heavy silence filled the room, stretching on until it threatened to tear them apart. Michael's thoughts seemed to spiral uncontrollably. Finally, he met her eyes, the pain in his unmistakable. I don't want to lose you, too. And just like that, Eva felt the roots of her anger starting to shift. In that small admission, a new fear gripped her heart. What would it mean to hold him accountable if it risked losing him forever? As she grappled with this, the door creaked open behind her. She turned, feeling the weight of every choice she had made bubble to the surface. Part of her wanted to say sorry, to reach out and bridge the gap between them. But another part felt heavy with betrayal and rage. The faint sound of footsteps encroached, and as the figure stepped into the room, Ava's breath caught in her throat. It was Sarah, her father's new girlfriend, the woman who had pulled him from their lives. I thought I wouldn't interrupt, she said, her voice too smooth, too calculated. A sudden chill shot through Ava. Everything shifted. Sarah, what are you doing here? Michael said. And in that moment, Eva felt the world tilt dangerously off its axis. What choice would she make now? The door creaked open, and there she was, standing in the half-light of the room, her eyes bright with uncertainty. Just hours ago, Alex had believed they were fine, that they were indestructible. But seeing her now, shoulders slumped and lips pressed together, he felt the weight of their unraveling. Ava, he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. It hung in the air thick and heavy. She glanced away, as if the very sight of him was too painful. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. His heart raced. He braced himself, but not for what would come next. He had never imagined the words would tear through the fragile fabric of their life. About what? He asked, though he already knew. Ava took a step back, as if retreating from him, and the unspoken words fell between them like an unseen chasm. The silence was deafening. I saw you with her, she finally said, her tone sharp, edged with both pain and betrayal. Last week, at that coffee shop, you didn't even try to hide it. Alex's breath caught in his throat. The shock hit him like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to explain, to deny, to fight for what was left of them. But all he could manage was a shallow inhale and a distant heartache. It was nothing. A mistake. Just a misunderstanding. Ava shook her head, her fingers clasping and unclasping, as if searching for something to hold on to. A mistake? Is that what you call it now? After everything we built? His stomach twisted as she pulled her arms tightly around herself, shielding what was left of her heart. He took a cautious step forward, wanting to bridge that widening gap. You have to believe me. I love you. Do you? She interjected, her voice rising, laced with anger and hurt. It doesn't feel that way when I hear about you laughing with someone else. The accusation hung in the air. Alex clenched his jaw, trying to summon the right words, the ones that could reconnect them. It was a moment of weakness, Ava. This isn't how I wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this. And yet here we are, she replied, tears glimmering like shattered glass in her eyes. You think it's easy for me to stand here and confront you? After everything? He wanted to reach out, but fear held him back. Every inch felt monumental, a mountain they both had to climb if they were to find a way back. Please, let's just talk about this. I need you to trust me. I want to explain. What's there to explain? She said, her voice breaking. You chose her over me, Alex. You made your choice. A silence fell again. This time it whispered of a finality that chilled him. He could see the resolve hardening in her eyes, like an armor she was preparing to wear. You didn't just let me down. You broke me. Her words froze his heart, and he staggered back from the weight of her disappointment. I can fix this, he pleaded, voice hoarse. I'll do anything. Anything, she echoed, her tone steely. What does that even mean now? What can you offer that can bring back the past? The trust? His mind raced, searching for a way to rewind the clock. I thought you were my forever, he whispered, but it felt desperate, like grasping at smoke. I thought we were stronger than this. Her gaze softened for a moment, and he saw a flicker of the love they had shared. But it evaporated, replaced by something colder, more distant. Sometimes strength isn't enough. You should have seen this coming, Alex. We were unraveling long before this. He felt himself trembling, the reality of her words striking him deeper than any betrayal. He had been so focused on himself, on silencing his own fears, that he had ignored the small cracks forming between them. I'm so sorry, Ava. I didn't know. Please forgive me. Forgiveness? She scoffed. But there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. I wish it were that simple. We can't just brush this aside like it never happened. It's too late. The room thickened with desperation. He reached out, again, this time more resolutely. But she flinched away. Don't, she whispered, the defeat creeping into her voice. Maybe this is the moment when I choose to stop trying. Maybe this is where I finally set myself free. A lump formed in his throat, and Alex felt the walls close in around him, suffocating him as fear braided itself tightly in his chest. Free? But what about us? She turned away from him and stared out the small window, the moonlight painting shadows on her face. I don't want to forget you, but I can't keep pretending everything is okay. It's not. The silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive. Alex's heart raced as he tried to absorb her words, knowing they had reached a peak he could not climb. Moments blurred into one another, and he could feel the room slipping away, the air thickening with a desperation that threatened to drown them both. I can't lose you, Ava, he said, his voice cracking. I can't. She turned back, her expression torn between resolve and sorrow. You already have, Alex. I just think you're too scared to realize it. And then the moment shifted. A palpable tension filled the space. In her eyes he saw something break, a solitary tear spilling down her cheek. The image was haunting as she glanced one last time at the life they shared, and without another word, she headed for the door. Wait, he shouted, panic rising beneath his skin. But the door clicked shut behind her with a finality that echoed through him. He stood alone, the silence swallowing him whole, heart pounding, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. He was left with nothing but the weight of his choices, and the dreadful knowledge that he might have just lost the only person who made the world feel whole. Staring at the closed door, a thought crackled in his mind like static electricity. Could he really have been so blind? And in that moment of brutal revelation, he felt a flicker of determination spark within him. There had to be a way back. There had to be.